Meteorological Agency has predicted that the 2014 rainfall season will commence earlier than last year, and it will be less compared to the previous year. I spoke to the Director General of the agency on the implications of the prediction. Hello there. Welcome to the program. I am Omelogo Nnadi. Following the flooding in most parts of the country in 2012, many Nigerians will be keen to know what the weatherman has to say about the weather each year. Well, this year, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency has predicted less rainfall, but it comes with its consequences, and that's what we will be looking at in the interview segment. But first, let's watch the presentation of the 2014 seasonal rainfall predictions.
It's that time of the year when the Nigerian Meteorological Agency announces its seasonal rainfall predictions. The Director General of the agency, Dr. Anthony Anoforo, says most parts of the country may experience a shorter length of season. He urged Nigerians to heed the warnings by the agency.
We recall again what happened in 2012. NIMET predicted the flooding in February, issued warnings, but the floods seemed to most communities unawares. They were unprepared and took no precaution. Of course, the destruction to lives and property were monumental, and the losses were indeed colossal. The lesson from this is that although government through NIMET is playing its own role, is doing its part, and has been allowed to reach responsibility of providing early warning, but the information did not penetrate to the vulnerable communities.
The Supervising Minister of Aviation, in a keynote address, says the federal government will continue to put measures in place to avert a repeat of the 2012 flooding that affected many parts of the country.
The provision of early warning information to the public is one of the most effective measures for reducing weather and climate disaster risks. The federal government has therefore taken a number of steps aimed at ensuring that accurate and timely meteorological early warnings information are available to Nigerians. In this regard, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency has been strengthened through the provision of modern equipment and infrastructure for weather observation and forecasting.
The 2014 seasonal rainfall prediction by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency is a stitching time for Nigerian farmers and all those whose means of livelihood depend on the vagaries of the weather.
Joining me now is Dr. Anthony Anoforo of NIMET. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Let us start by doing a sort of recap of the 2014 rainfall prediction. Can you give us a breakdown of the rainfall pattern, if possible, state by state?
I'm afraid it's difficult in a setting like this to give the breakdown state by state. Not that we cannot, we can. But in a setting like this, I need maps and so on. What I can do is to inform you and Nigerians that we have predictions covering 372 cities, towns, and villages in Nigeria. First, we look at the onset date, because in the seasonal rainfall prediction, we deal with the onset date, the cessation date, and rainfall amount. These are the three parameters we predict. As for the onset date, our prediction shows that most parts of Nigeria will experience normal to near normal onset date. with the exception of some areas in the eastern flank of Nigeria. If you take the map of Nigeria, from Yola, that strip from Yola down to Ugoja, Obudu area, will likely experience delayed onset. And when we say delay, that is, it's coming a bit later than normal. Also, the extreme western flank, again, the small strip stretching from Shaki down to Ijebu-Ode, may experience, or is likely to experience, delayed onset of rainy season. Ditto for a small area around Zamfara State. Those areas are the areas that may experience delayed onset. Delayed relative to normal. Normal here means the 30-year average, because we have historical data that guide us in what we are doing. So we have looked at the average onset date over the past 30 years. Most parts of Nigeria will fit into somewhere around that normal, whereas the other parts I have just mentioned may have delayed onset. Now, next is the cessation date. That is, around what date will the rainy season end? Again, most parts of the country will experience normal cessation dates, with the exception of some areas in the north where there will be early cessation. Again, the maps in our SRP will clearly show you the areas that are so affected. So overall, we can say that the greater parts of the country will have normal onset, and then some others will have delayed onset, while some areas too will have delayed cessation, while early cessation, while others will have normal cessation. So this is the broad pattern we're expecting. But perhaps the greatest thing we need to emphasize, the most important thing we may have to emphasize here, is the occurrence of frequent dry spells in the north during the rainy season. Month of June, July, we may have outbreak of dry spells in parts of the north.
Well, what does that mean?
That means that suddenly the weather becomes very dry. And so those in agriculture, that is when they will consider to irrigate. Also, the what we call the little dry season, or what we also call the August break. August break this year is likely to be somehow pronounced in terms of duration and in terms of the spread. It's going to spread. August break is usually very predominant in the southwestern part, but this time around it's going to spread to other states in the south, stretching up to the middle belt area of the country in terms of duration and in terms of spread. So this is the kind of pattern that we need to point out. Now, talking about amount of rainfall, we have also predicted that the amount of rainfall will range from around 1,000 millimeters in the north down up to 3,000 millimeters in the south. And this falls within the normal range of rainfall. So for those areas that will have shorter than normal rainfall, because if you have delayed onset and early cessation, it means that your length of rainy season is shorter. So if it is shorter and you have the same amount of rainfall as usual, it means the rains will be of high intensity. So these are some of the things we need to also highlight. Also, we predicted the length of rainy season. It ranges from around 180 days in the north, between 180 and 100 days in the far north, and in between 220 and 300 days in the south.
Are these predictions, could they be said to be as a result of climate change?
You see, we have to be careful when we talk about climate change. What I have found out that anything that looks a bit unusual, people will say, oh, climate change. It could be. But for us in the science, in the weather science, we talk about climate change based on long-term observation. Now, we must distinguish between climate change and climate variability. So what people often jump up at is climate variability. Climate variability is normal and natural, but climate change is a more serious issue. Yes, there is climate change, but it doesn't mean that if it rains more this year than it did last year, then that is climate change. That is part of climate variability.
You predicted below normal rainfall. And on the other hand, you put up a warning to pilots to watch out for bad weather. One would think that this is usually when there is a large amount of rain and, you know.
What we are saying is that a large number of areas would have shorter than normal. In terms of amount of rainfall, it falls within the normal range. And what is the normal range? Somewhere around 1,000 in the far north, millimeters in the far north, to 3,000 millimeters down south, Warri, Port Harcourt, Yenagoa, and all that. That is what we said.
Okay, so what's the warning for pilots about weather conditions that they have to do?
Of course, during the rains, thunderstorms that are hazardous to aircraft are more predominant. They are more frequent. So that is why we say that during the rainy season, they should pay particular attention to the weather information so that they will know the areas where you have thunderstorms. Of course, there's a type of cloud we call the CB clouds. CB clouds are those huge clouds that you see standing very tall. At times they look like an anvil. You know, aircraft should not fly into them. They are very, very active weather areas. So that is why we say that pilots should watch out.
Okay, let's look at what these predictions for 2014, what impact are they going to have on Nigeria economically and otherwise?
You see, the rainfall and indeed temperature are two critical factors, particularly rainfall, when it comes to agriculture. Flow of rivers that also impacts on our capacity to generate hydroelectric power. So if the rainfall pattern is normal, or rather if the length of rainy season is shorter than normal in some areas, those farmers in those areas will do well to go for fast maturing varieties of crops so that you can plant, the crop matures and you harvest quickly before the rainy season ceases.
We will go on a short break now, and when we return, we'll tell you more about the impact of the 2014 seasonal rainfall predictions on the nation's economy and otherwise.
I am intelligent.
I'm incisive.
I am passionate.
I am focused.
I am diplomatic.
I'm creative.
I am people-oriented.
I am logical.
I am detailed.
I am determined.
I am inquisitive.
I am trained.
Welcome back to Dateline Abuja. I still have here with me the Director General of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, Dr. Anthony Anuforum. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
You were telling me about the impact of the 2014 predictions on the nation's economy and otherwise. You just mentioned agriculture. What other places will there be impacts on?
Yes, still talking about agriculture, for instance, because the seasonal rainfall prediction, we describe it as a tool for disaster risk reduction. So if you have an idea of the rainfall pattern and you're a farmer, you would now take precautions and do the right thing, avoid losses where necessary, and take advantage of the of good weather. If you are in an area where we have said that the rainfall will be normal, of course you can